Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you also to the TheHouseMonk for organizing the summit. I'm Carlos de la Rama Noriega, and I will be moderating this panel today. The topic today is innovation in real estate marketing in real estate as a service. We have an amazing panel today. My first question to all of you is, why do you do what you do? Who wants to start? Maybe Robin.
It's a great question. So I am originally born and raised in Denmark to an American mother and a Danish father. They're very hippie, super hippies, really. You know, they were always into the new age spiritual movement. So I think I grew up in that world as a child, but I also love technology. And the reason I came into this world of technology about 20 years ago is because I wanted to work for companies that could have the most impact on people's lives. And I certainly saw at that point in time, this was the end of the 90s, these technology companies were having such an impact on people's lives in a way that we've never seen before, in a scale we've never seen before. But I've been in Silicon Valley, just to cut a long story short, for about 20 years now. And in that time, you know, we've seen now innovations spring up all over the world. I have now been back to Denmark for a few weeks, but I do what I do for the same reason why I came, is because I wanted to inspire people, as many people as I can, using technology as the vehicle to show people that there can be a better future.
Thank you, Robin. Let's go with Catherine. Why do you do what you do, Catherine?
Oh, Christine.
Oh, Christine, why do I see Catherine? Oh, I'm so sorry about this.
Close enough. Close enough.
Don't change your name, please.
Yeah, no. So love what Robin said about technology, just, you know, and especially again, because the scale, the fast scale, and uniting people globally, which is amazing. I felt like there should be a way that you can find housing anywhere in the world with a couple clicks on your phone. It doesn't need to just be short-term housing like Airbnb. You know, if they've pulled that off really well, why can't it also be long-term housing? Why can't you see a virtual tour right on your phone, feel like you've stepped in there? You know, maybe it's international, right? And you can't go see the place. So yeah, Kindred is the global directory so that you can find co-living anywhere in the world.
Thanks so much, Christine. And Karen, what about you?
I realized that it's just not about a market. It's just about catering to the right audience. The key to the entire thing is tap in, tune in. So I tune into them and stuff, and I go back to the original principles of vernacular advertising. You're trying to take care of the people who are actually your clientele and the kids coming in. So I'm a firm believer of the living space. I just feel that the student market is a very huge market. It's not talked about that much, but that's what is required.
So one phrase is space, or by extension, real estate, has come to be marketed as a service rather than a commodity. So what does this mean? The consumer is buying an experience associated with the space and not merely this space. So it's the service, not the space. And there's another phrase that I love: service to the consumer is a service of innovation. They want the best for themselves. They know what they want, and they want it right now, as if it were a pair of Nikes. I hope that our audience agrees that there's a fundamentally change in the real estate industry that has been driven by how the demand has been changing, and we have to move beyond this traditional real estate. So this is a service. It's not that you're just selling the space or renting the spaces. You have a layer on top of that. And the problem here, and you are the experts on marketing, is how do you communicate? And this is the question: how do you communicate the experience? Robin can answer that.
Just a little commentary on what we just talked about. I think we're seeing the fastest change ever in just how people are living due to the pandemic. Obviously, it used to be you got your space you worked and your space where you live, and those are just collapsing overnight. And which means that our spaces, no matter where they are, have to be much more integrated and have to feed us the energy that we need in order to feel like we have an integrated life at work, at home, and everything else. But if you're trying to market your space, you know, I come from the commercial real estate market. If I think about a space, you know, you want to know before you get into a space, you know, you say, okay, here's my budget. So you have a certain amount of money that you want to be able to spend on a space. So there's a financial component to a space. I think that's very important. And that you can communicate that easily, I think, online. There's probably a productivity or efficiency component, like how am I going to use this space? How is it best used for me, for my family, for my situation that I want to be? Is it going to be used for work? Is it going to be used for living? Is it going to be used for both, and so on? Those can also be solved, I think, somewhat online. The hardest thing to solve, I think, with space marketing is the feel of a space. right? The emotional feel of a space is very hard. The reason why you say, okay, I have, $500,000 to go buy an apartment. The reason you go and look at 30 or 40 or 50 different places because you want to feel what the space is like. And that is something that where technology, I think, has lagged behind a lot. And that's one of the things that we're trying to solve. And the companies I can see now who are doing this well and adding an emotional component, either with 3D tours or with sound, or maybe with live touring, even using Zoom and FaceTime and so on, is because they want to be able to share the emotional experience of what it's like to be in a space. A photo will just not do it justice. A static web page will not do that justice anymore. And so you need to be able to communicate the emotional experience, because think about marketing at its core. People buy with emotion and they support with facts. That's how it's always been, right? And the companies who do it wrong is they try to over inundate you with facts, all these statistics and stuff. But the truth of any good marketing, in my experience, 20, 25 years, is people buy with emotion and they support with facts. And so if you can figure out a way to communicate that emotion, especially space is super personal. This is where I'm going to, again, raise my family and live for a long time. If you can't communicate that, you're going to miss out. And so there are a lot of great technologies and platforms that will help you do that. But it's also a matter of, tying into the community, that the stories of the community themselves, getting them front and center. It's not about me, it's about you. So if you're marketing a co-living situation, for example, talk to the members, share their stories, why they're there. People want to feel that. And I think that's a super important point, not just, again, the money or the location of a space, but the feel of it.
I had a question about that, which is targeting a specific niche. The moment you do that, my guess is that the results are better measurable.
It's about finding your tribe and making your tribe to heroes. I always think the best marketing is the companies that say, okay, we want to tell your story. It's not about telling our story. We want to highlight your success and your happiness. It's not about highlighting how great we are. Nobody cares about that, right? So if you can tap into that, whether that's a small community, a large community, and figure out how to grow that, that is how you create a successful company. That's how you create a great brand, because people want to belong to something. They want to be a part of something. And if you can find out who that is, and of course, it's the bigger the tribe is, the more successful you're going to be. But you think about the greatest brands of all time, not just in real estate, but Airbnb and Nike and so on. I mean, they've tapped into a feeling, right? You're part of that tribe when you're staying there, buying that. Same with car companies. It doesn't really matter. You got to figure out how to showcase that. And the best way to do it today, honestly, so many great channels, but I think social media is one of the best ways, because you can share authentically. You can of course pay a lot of money for marketing, and most companies do, but sharing the organic, authentic stories. And what's happened in the pandemic is really interesting is it's now actually more and more acceptable to share stories that are kind of low quality, meaning like it doesn't have to be super produced anymore. It doesn't have to be the greatest lighting in a studio and cost $500,000 to shoot this. Now it's like, hey, to just record somebody on your phone. It's leveled the playing field, I think. So it's a great time to be a startup, because you can compete in a different way with all these big companies with huge budgets.
Awesome. And Christine, what do you think of this?
Okay, so a couple of things real quick. I think that, it is an experience now. Living is an experience. You move to a new city, you've never been there before. You've got an instant social group, right? That they're going to take you out. They're going to show you the local venues. They're going to introduce you to your friends or their friends, and it's going to just improve your social circle almost overnight. Also events. So I always stress, and I know we've got people, listening that are not in co-living necessarily. Maybe they're in rental market, maybe they're in co-working. Those events, make sure you're making a big deal and putting on some incredible events. I think more and more that's going to set you guys apart. There's now co-living being built side by side, competitors that are sharing a wall. So, if one's having amazing events and they're inviting, their friends over, they're going to say, well, gosh, I want to move into this co-living community. They have amazing events. So separately, when we're talking about, finding the tribe and creating, finding that ideal resident or guest, is making sure your avatar, like kind of having that picture, but crystal clear. So I consult with operators, large operators that know, they know the type of person, the rough age, but the more specific you guys can get, the better. This is John. He's moved up to San Francisco, as an engineer. He's making this much per year. He's a little introverted, but he wants to live with people. And the more specific you guys can get, the easier it is to market and attract that perfect resident. So hopefully that helps.
Great.
What Christine just said is 100% true. And I'll just chime in because this was my experience at WeWork as well, which is similar again to what we're talking about, not 100%, but
Absolutely.
you know, it's hard to create a beautiful office space, especially like co-working. It's hard, but it's not that hard. What set WeWork apart was all the programming, to Christine's point, like the events that you had, every opportunity to bring the people together in that space, whether that was 100 companies, 500 companies. And again, it's the same in a co-living situation. Everything you can do to elevate the experience with events, with guest speakers, with outings, with things that foster a sense of community and belonging, you're gonna see those people stand up for each other and help each other in ways that the world desperately needs right now. So that's super positive.
And that's the reason why WeWork ended up acquiring Meetup. So regarding to that, WeWork is a large company and they have a large team, but if you are not that large, running events, community, it's tough, especially if you want to do it in a way that is consistent. So one thing that I did myself, and I'd like to see your opinion on this, is how to leverage your own community so they organically do the events and the content, how to organize that. Are there any tools to do that?
Okay, it's about engagement with the community, which I'm building. So that engagement, whether it's about events, whether it's about contests or something, it's about getting them together. And that whole holistic view of getting people together is what drives it.
What's interesting though, again, is also just how do you do that in this world that we're living in when it is hard to get people together and there are restrictions on how many? I think you can look to the digital world a lot. You know, I mean, at work we use Slack, right? And so there's no reason why you couldn't have a Slack community for people living together, or even parents, or whatever it is. For example, you know, my son goes to school. He's a ninth grader. He just started high school in a new school, and the parents are all like, you know, on these kind of communities together. But then even within that, for example, I'll give you the analogy of I joined this company Matterport at the end of March. So I haven't met anybody on my team. It's kind of weird, but we've been communicating through Zoom, through Slack, through email, and so on. And now we're trying to figure out, well, how do we also foster community? Because that's to Karan's point, is it's a little hard when you can't be there physically. So we, for example, installed this plugin to Slack that allows us to it'll randomly select people who are part of the Slack group for you to meet. And it'll come back with you and say, hey, have you talked to Christine? We're going to set up a 30-minute coffee chat for you and Christine. And then next week, we're going to set up a meeting for you and Susan, and so on. But it's super cool. There's so much innovation happening, because the thing that people have been lacking the last 6 months is this feeling of being together. So to your point, like, this is what makes us happy as human beings. You know, we're social animals. In order to kickstart a community, you as the community manager, if that's what you want to call it, have to be able to seed the groundwork and do some programming and invite people to be a part of it in a non-threatening way, so they can feel like it's inclusive. And then over time, if you do it well and you do it frequently enough, then the community will start doing it on their own. But it takes time. You know, people want to do it overnight. Doesn't happen. Building a brand doesn't happen overnight. Building a community does not happen overnight. It takes time to do so.
Agree. And you have to be very focused on that. You have to be very clear on what your DNA is and stick to it. So I had another question that one of our listeners is asking. She says, we are a senior housing facility. What channel should we use for finding customers? And this is one of the questions, because in my case with Startup Embassy, we used everything that was available, like, for example, obviously Airbnb. And that was an issue for us, because we rejected more than 80% of people that applied through Airbnb because they were not our target. So it was very difficult to find channels that were useful for us in our channels. In specific cases, senior housing facility, what would you tell her?
I'm guessing, and I don't know the statistic off my head, is that it's actually the children that are finding the homes a lot of times for the parents, helping, assisting. So they are on social media, actually. So then the messaging would need to be targeted towards them to actually, you know, talk about, you know, a great place for their parents to live. Again, I don't know this exact statistic. Maybe somebody else on this knows.
I saw a study, a marketing and brand study from last year, that said that offline advertising has 5 times more recall than digital advertising, because people are so inundated with digital advertising on all these different platforms. And so for this kind of audience, again, I'm not an expert, but I would imagine that offline advertising actually works, which means flyers, direct mail, maybe billboards, maybe even radio ads and so on. I don't want to stereotype, but I doubt that they're on TikTok, for example, or Snapchat, right, as much. But they are on Facebook. Of all the digital channels, I would probably choose Facebook. I think every study shows that the Facebook audience skews a little bit older now. The younger generation, the Gen Z and the millennials are using more Instagram, TikTok, and so on. So Facebook is probably the best digital channel, would be my guess. It's not LinkedIn. It's not Instagram, probably. It's probably Facebook. But offline, I think, would work really well for this audience. And I would not discount it. Even though everything has been moving digital for the last 10, 20 years, offline still works really well.
Another question that is very similar, specific to the student housing. Any tips specifically for marketing student housing spaces?
Look, it's a recession-proof market, but the fact is that with the COVID times and all, we're all adjusting to everything. And your space is a brand which is actually catering to all of their students. We understand that there are limitations in terms of, the regulations and all which have been passed by the governments. For example, in the US, there they've given a whole year off. Over here, we guys are going to be starting with the education system by the 1st of October, right? And we are just trying and ensuring that we have all the students coming in with the belief that they're going to be all very well looked after. And of course, it's a recession-proof industry, no doubt, because education is recession-proof. We guys are doing everything that we could, in our ability to just cater to them and give them the best facilities and safety that is possible. But having said that, I'll be very honest with you. We are looking at another month at least for the students and all to be back.
Someone has asked, okay, but how to convince real estate owners and investors of the fact that community engagement actually will lead to ROI? Tenant rotation, referral, and so on. So we will actually save budget for that.
The investors want to see numbers, I'm guessing, right? Obviously, yes, we can preach how important community is and engagement, of course, but an investor just mainly wants to see the actual statistics. What's your turnover rate? Now based on, and again, I'm trying to think of like where you would get those statistics from. As time goes on, they can see their competitors, hey, their churn and residents has slowed down because of these events they're putting on in the community they've built. So there is a way to attach numbers to that. And that's what the investors want to see. Here our vacancy has dropped because we added these events. It's pretty easy to convince investors when you're showing a 20% increase of NOI if you have a co-living community versus a regular multifamily building.
If I might elaborate a little bit also on some of what we just heard, and I'm a technologist, I've been for a long time, and the idea behind Matterport, and the reason I was attracted to this company is because we are making it easy for everyone to do what we call a digital twin, a 3D version of your space. And now we've opened it up so you can do it with your iPhone. We did that. We launched that in May because we wanted to give everyone access to be able to create a replica of their space, whether that's a room, a house, an office in full 3D. But not only can you create a replica of that space, you can engage with it. So meaning you can insert pictures, signs, you can even do a full tour. And so to the question of, especially now when you think about how do you reopen schools safely? How do you reopen houses or your co-living situations? How do you reopen offices? How do you think about a casino as one of the questions here? And in order to give people the confidence that you're going to reopen safely, and you've thought about the flow of people in the space, the flow is going to matter a lot. How many people can congregate in a certain area? What if you're sitting and eating together? How do you even get to the bathroom and not bump into each other? Where are we going to put the hand sanitizer stations? How do you put up signage so people, but one of the things that we're focused on right now as a company is how do we tell the stories to companies, to universities, to schools, to co-living companies, that our technology can actually help you reopen more safely and faster because you can give people the experience of there. So for example, in order to open a school, think about how hard it's been for the world that schools are shut down. It's hard on parents, it's hard on teachers, it's hard on work. It's hard to work at home if you have kids running around. It's hard, it's been very detrimental, and we're all eager, the whole world, to open schools as quickly as we can. But we can't do it until we know we can do it safely, right? And so you want to be able to show to parents, to teachers, to politicians, to society that you can do so. And you've thought about every little interaction that happens in a school, the flow of the kids, where they're going to sit, how many people are going to be in a classroom, how they're going to be spaced out. And the reason I'm bullish on this kind of technology, and it's not just Matterport who thinks that this way, is you can use technology to actually plan for the future of what the world is going to look like, not what it looks like today. And that can give you confidence, it can give you safety, it can give you transparency. So if you're going to market opening a casino usually is packed with people. You want to give people a digital experience before they even show up in person, so they can know what it's like to be there. You know, how close am I going to stand to other people? How am I going to walk through the casino and all these things? Because we're going to live with this pandemic for a while. It's not like it's going to go away anytime soon. And so we have to plan for what the future looks like using all the technologies that we have. I think that's going to help society come back much quicker.